We're over here from Chewelah, Washington, which is about an hour north of Spokane, and so we got here very, very late last night, about 2 a.m. It's kind of hard to get away from a farm, let me tell you something. I'm a breeder and trainer of Appaloosa sport horses. I breed them for jumping, dressage, all the Olympic type events, and right now our program is one of the top 2 in the nation, so it's taken a long time and an awful lot of hard work. And you know, honestly, that has been my passion ever since I was born, was horses. And you know, I was a horse fanatic ever since day one. And you know, the Lord has an interesting way of working in our lives, you know. every speaker that I've listened to today, I'm sitting there going, yep, that's right, it all funnels right down. Everybody's saying different aspects of the same truth, and how nice that we're all speaking the truth, because as far as I'm concerned, I am sick of being lied to. I am so sick of being lied to. The deception is outstanding. And so here I am, a horse trainer. I was not political. You know, gosh, my parents were semi-political, and I didn't come from that kind of a background. And you know, as my life went along, I went through college and spent 6 years in college. I studied 2 years of engineering. Figured out that the math was way harder than I was ever going to be able to keep up with. And I wanted to be an aerospace engineer, so it was a sad defeat for me. But so then I went, well, I'm an animal lover. I've got to go to wildlife biology, you know. And so I was in there for 2 years studying wildlife biology. And then I went and talked to a good group of biologists, and they started telling me, okay, well, this is what you're going to do once you get out of college. And I find out, holy cow, I'm going to be working for minimum wage out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska tundra for 6 months at a time, and I've got horses and animals at home already. Who's going to take care of them, you know? So I had to cut that dream there after 2 years. So there's 4 years of college down the drain, right? And so then I decided, well, okay, I'm going to go for sociology, macro sociology. I really like that stuff. How cool! And so there I was in college for 2 years studying that, with my primary focus being on the Holocaust and eugenics, because my dad was a history teacher, and he was always, you know, teaching me history the whole time I was growing up, and I was particularly disturbed by the Holocaust. And so all my 20 and 30 page reports on eugenics and the Holocaust, you know, really added up to a complete picture of what had happened. And you know, I remember there was one picture in particular that was really disturbing to me, and I ran across it, even after all that research, I ran across it after I had my son, and he happened to be about the same size as this lady in this picture, who is standing naked with a whole bunch of other women who are standing there naked, holding their children. There, I'll try not to. That's still a tattoo. Well, and in the one picture, they're standing there, and in the next picture, they're all shocked. And I went, you know, how does a person get to that point? How does a person get to that point and resist? You don't. And I started thinking, you know, for that lady holding that little boy, she would have had to resist 5 years before then, you know, 150,000 minor steps before that point if she had wanted to prevent that from happening, right? And I went, you know, take that to heart, because prevention and adamant prevention can prevent, you know, this whole horrific scenario from ever happening again. And just like they always say, you learn your history so that the bad parts don't come up again. You don't repeat it. And so I really took that particular photograph to heart. I went, you know, if I ever see anything like that happening, I'm going to dig in. You know, that's all there is to it. It just gets me. I've got a son. I think that was what really hit home. And I think that was God's way of saying, here it is. Start looking, you know. And so I go through the 2 years of sociology. And then we go and buy a farm, which is 2 hours away from the university. And I went, oh, for crying out loud. Okay, so there's 6 years of all this full-time college. And I'm like, what a worthless education. You know, all that time, and it absolutely got me nowhere. And so, anyway, so there we are, finally on a farm. I had, you know, been working with horses ever since I was a little kid. And so it was my dream to pursue this, and my horse breeding and all the research I had done on horse bloodlines. I finally had it all pulled together in one place, and the farm isn't the best farm, but it took a lot of work, and it's, you know, it's coming around, and we really put our effort into it. Well, so there I am, and just happy as a clam, and all of a sudden this NACE thing pops up, the National Animal Identification System pops up. And I saw that on a flyer in the feed store in 2006, in February of 2006, and I just went, ah! God showed me, you watch out for this stuff. You pay attention, because the second you see it start creeping up, you don't want to end up at that pit standing naked, waiting to be shot. And that's, you know, that's really putting the cart before the horse, or you may think, but it's not in retrospect. You know, if you're looking back from the event to where they could have started, you know, that kind of puts it into a better perspective. So I went, yep, here it is, and I told God in my heart, if you ever need me, I'm here. And so that was kind of, I get choked up. That's how it is, and that's the truth.
Your education did serve you well, didn't it?
Yes, and it's very fascinating how the Lord works, you know. I mean, it's like, wow, talk about bring all these components together, and it all fits together, because all my research studies, I mean, as it's unfolding, I'm sitting there going, I don't believe this. I don't believe this. This is uncanny, you know. And so anyway, I instantly basically dropped what I was doing. My whole love of the whole breeding program that I'd worked so hard my whole life to, you know, finally get to the culmination point of, was suddenly threatened. I went, this is a fascist system. This is exactly what Stalin tried to do in Russia. This is, you know, as I'm researching, they're following the exact blueprint that Stalin had to industrialize the food supply. And so, boy, did I dig in. I mean, you know, for me to drop my horse focus and put my full-time attention, 8 to 10 hours a day, researching for stopanimalid.org, you know, was astounding. Who can pull me away from horses, right? Well, that did. And the fact that I have a son and a husband, and these things that I care about, if I don't stop what I'm doing and start action right now, this very second, I could end up that way. And so could they. And so after 722 documents and articles that I posted for this website, and about 2 years later, by then we had introduced bills into the legislature that were anti-NACE bills, because this National Animal Identification System, like she said, is an RFID microchipping system where they want to chip every animal. Of course, they want to chip the people too. But what was a key point that was also interesting about that is that all the key players in the Holocaust are here again, you know, and so that's another coordinating of information and knowledge, because like in the Holocaust, it was IBM that came up with the Hollerith cards to register the people, and it was IBM that came up with the idea of tattooing people's arms. And it's IBM today that is the sister company of Verichip, the microchip producer. Okay, so that is some other information that when you pull it together and you add it up, you go, okay, you know, you can't refute what you're seeing, you can't ignore the truth. It's time to, you know, no matter how scary it is, it's time to look at it, embrace it, and, you know, you talk to God. You say, you're going to have to help us. And so, it just, I'm sorry, it's kind of an emotional thing. It chokes me up a lot. But, so anyway, as I'm going through studying all this, and I'm giving public presentations on this, organizing protests and rallies, and we're trying to pass bills, and we can't get anybody in the legislature to give us the time of day. I mean, you know, there's one time when we drove over in the middle of the winter with a 25-car pile up on the pass. It took us 12 hours each way, and we get there, and as our bill is being read in the legislature, all of them get up and leave for lunch.
Oh, beautiful.
There was 2 that sat there and listened, and that was an eye-opener to me. I went, are you kidding? There's probably a good 25 of us. In the middle of the week, it was on a Wednesday. We had to leave work, our farms, everything that we had going. We had to leave the night before and drive that long through that treacherous of a condition, and they got up and left. And so that was the first year. The second year, they did just about the same thing. And so, you know, this, with the idea of it being, you know, the whole thing with the agenda being either party system, one will favor it, one will not. It's not. It's not a party system at all. It is a whole, it's a whole invasion, basically. And they're using the parties that are willing to go along with it to facilitate it. And I'm a Republican, you know. In 2010, I ran for county commissioner because through all my research with the National Animal Identification System, it led me to the UN, and then I kept researching and then almost put my whole focus on researching the United Nations. And so as I'm researching this and posting this, the website got shut down and completely erased. They erased all of the information, all the other researchers' information, and somebody in Estonia had bought it and wiped it all out, and to this day you can still get on there, but there's no information. They left it there kind of like, this is what we're going to do if you start posting this too soon, because, you know, they wanted to get a good leg up before everybody was aware of what was going on. So anyway, we're going along, and I'm fighting this whole NACE system, and about 2007, when this started happening, then I started giving presentations on the United Nations, and in 2009, here comes the Department of Ecology to our farm saying, well, you know what, we've got this 40-acre farm, and we've got a seasonal creek, and of course we've got horses, and the DOE comes and says, well, since you've got horses that are drinking out of this creek, you're going to have to start fencing off all of your property that your horses are even remotely close to this water, and expecting me to just roll over and say, okay. And I said, no, I don't think I'm going to be doing that. I'm not going to be doing anything like that without a court order. And he laughed on the phone. He says, oh, that's not the way we work. And I said, well, what do you mean that's not the way you work? What exactly do you do? He goes, oh, well, we'll just fine you. And I said, really? How much? He says, we'll fine you $10,000 per day until you comply. And if it happens to where you don't comply long enough that the fines exceed the value of your property, we'll just assume your whole farm and have the sheriff come in and legally remove you. And I was on the phone, and I actually yelled. I went, holy cow! I said, oh my gosh, do you guys cut off fingers and break arms too? I said, because that's about as mafia sounding tactic as I have ever heard. And he was quiet. He says, No, we don't cut off fingers and break arms. And I said, well, you might as well. You might as well, because that's what you're essentially doing. And I said, he goes, well, you know, your horses are destroying riparian zones. And I said, my horses are not destroying riparian zones. For one, the creek is dry for at least a quarter of a mile on our property for all the spawning seasons. I said, so if you could tell me what fish spawns in the dirt, I'll be happy to do what you're talking about. I said, until you can prove something like that, there's nothing like that going on. And he said, oh, there's fish in there, all right. I said, there's no fish in there. Trust me. And there's not. It's less of a creek and more of a drainage. And so, as it happened, this is extremely stressful on somebody who's worked their whole lives to develop a perfect, as far as I'm concerned, it's not perfect, you know, but a very good horse breeding program, and then you've got somebody threatening to take it all away. And if somebody took it all away, where's my horses going to go? Where's my family going to go? What are we going to do? Just be shoved out onto the street and handed nothing back? And I said, well, you can't just take our property. He goes, oh, no, you said take. We're not going to take it. We'll pay you for it. And so he figured out, I said, really? Well, how much? And he figured out how much property they would be taking. And he says, well, that would add up to $78 per year. And I went, 10 acres of some of the very best sub-irrigated grazing ground that you can find. It looks like a park. It's gorgeous out there, big trees, lush green everywhere. And I just laughed. I said, you know what? If I could find 10 acres of the prime grazing grassland like this for $78 a year, I would have bought 100 of them yesterday. It's just, you know, this whole idea of compensation, and their idea of compensation is a joke. And so we basically just kind of dug in and said, no, we don't, you know, we're going to stand here on our constitutional rights, and whether people think the Constitution's dead or not, unless somebody comes right up to me, like, you know, elected officials, and signs some document saying, we're sorry, the Constitution is no longer in effect, I'm going to stand there and I'm going to hold to it. And you can push me around, you can try. We're going to stand there. We're going to stand up. We're going to call on God. We're going to say, I don't think so. Not on my watch. Not. And so we did. And for a year, let me tell you what, we didn't sleep. You don't get sleep when that kind of thing is going on. And so the whole time I'm also sitting there thinking, what on earth are we going to do? They've got $1 billion. You know, they can hire hordes of attorneys to constantly hound us. I knew people that had already been hounded by the DOE for 10 solid years and made to pay fines of over $75,000. And who has $75,000 to pay anything, let alone the DOE? You know what I mean? And so for that whole year, we were very, very stressed, and that was when I decided, yeah, it's time for me to run for county commissioner, and I'm going to just put the biggest spotlight on what they're doing. I'm not going to let them just, you know, sit here and work behind the shadows and in the dark while they're running us into the ground. We're paying their wages and they're running us into the ground. And so I did. We went out there and we got loud and we got public and we just barked and barked and barked. And we brought a lot of attention to what they were doing and what was going on. And finally, as you know, as the way things work when you are interested in being an agent for God, you know, standing up and having courage is something that God respects and appreciates. It worked out for us. It worked out for us because in one of the candidates' evenings, one of our representatives, she comes up and she says, you know, Rene, can I come out and see your place? Is that okay? And I said, by all means, come on out. And she got out there, and it was Representative Shelley Short. She's still in the legislature. And she got out there, and she just laughed. She said, I'm sorry, but this is the biggest joke, because the Department of Ecology had described your place as being something along the lines of a CAFO, a concentrated animal feeding operation. Like where you see the 5 acres with 1 million cows on it type deal, and it's just mud and gunk and disease and stuff. Our farm is gorgeous, 40 acres, lush green everywhere. She goes, this looks like my place. And this is the biggest joke I've heard all year, And she said, well, so I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm going to go to bat for you guys on this one. And she sat there with the regional director of the Department of Ecology and the agent that had been harassing us. And she basically, after an hour, she said, okay, well, here's the bottom line. If you ever go out to their property again, it's not going to be without me being there at the same time. And they went, okay, all right, we'll back off. They backed off. I mean, it doesn't happen. That does not happen. Dealing with the DOE is like dealing with a great white. You don't get out there because, if they get you to bleed, then they're going to frenzy. And that's exactly what they're like. They're like dealing with a frenzied attacking shark because they're vicious. They have no value related to human life whatsoever. It's the deer, it's the wildlife. Everything comes before a human as far as they're concerned. So they could care less. Oh, so what? And so that one thing was kind of God's way of showing, yes, you stood up and I helped you. Any gift you get like that is a gift from God. And there's no doubt about it. Because you don't get rid of the DOE. Nobody I ever knew has ever gotten rid of the DOE. And so it's a very, very important message that you understand that if you want to be working against the evil that's going on, and if you want to be helping God as a Christian, working in good things, and trying to better people's lives and stand up against what's wrong, He's going to help you. And that's our testament to that actual fact, And so I didn't win as a county commissioner. The guy that was the president of the Cattlemen's Association, he beat me, and that was fine because I didn't win the race, but we won our farm, basically. I mean, we didn't win the election, but we're still here today. We're still on the farm, and we did something that nobody else I ever have heard of has been able to do with God's help. And so it's interesting how those kind of things work. And, in my research, as it's going along and I'm pulling different facts together here and there, the whole group of us is building up. We're getting braver. We're taking more actions. And in 2009, I attended a city council hearing on the implementation of sustainable development. They were going to adopt it at that point. And so myself and Gloria Clark and about probably another 120 of us all showed up to this hearing. And we all get up there and we're saying, you guys can't adopt this. This is a United Nations plan. This is foreign. If you're going to be answering to the UN, you're no longer answering to the people. You can't have two masters here. And they had this huge, high-powered group of people working in coordination with a sustainable effort. These high-powered environmental attorneys and professors of biology and EPA officials, everybody was there. And you get up there and you'd say this stuff, and they'd turn around and say, these people are conspiracy theorists, they're wackos, everything they're saying is not true. And as my luck had it, I had all my stacks of paperwork there with me, and I had quotes from Joan Bion's book from the mayors saying, we are here to bring sustainable development back to the United States, and I gave each and every one of them a copy of all of that, along with multiple lists of websites right on the UN websites themselves, so that they could verify and they could check it out. And I was the last speaker before the mayor got up, and good thing, because I was able to get up there, turn around to all those people and look right at those environmental attorneys and say, you know what, this is a UN program. We're not conspiracy theorists or wackos. And I laid it all out. And then the mayor had to get up there, and since she had watched me hand all these things to every council member up there, she had to admit that yes, it was a foreign program. And so all of us cheered. They had to eat crow. They had to sit there and eat crow because, here we are, the conspiracy theorists and wackos that just proved them wrong, And it was recorded. so it was. What's that?
Can we see it on YouTube?
I don't know. It's in It would be in public record. You could always look it up. That's very cool. Yeah.
Was any of the U.S. congressmen there?
No. And yeah.
Is this Ferry County?
No, this is Spokane County.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
It was the city of Spokane, the mayor's sustainability action plan.
Right. And so I don't know, I thought that we were victorious at that point. I went, yes, we stood up, we all basically made the stand, we did the good thing. And after it was over, one of the city council members comes up to me, she says, Rene, we were told that whether we passed this or not, they were going to implement it regardless. And I said, holy cow, how is that legal? And she says, I don't even know. It's just that's what we were told. And sure enough, they passed it. They passed it anyway. And so it was kind of a mixed thing. We got to at least prove all the high-powered attorneys wrong and whatnot. But then again, we still lost. And it didn't really strike me as being that bad until about 2 weeks later, I found out that at that very same time, 500 cities total around the whole United States had adopted it simultaneously. And Spokane was the only city that even protested it across the whole United States. And I went, oh my gosh, that's like a coup. You get a foreign governance to spread across 500 cities in a nation all in the same little season. That's pretty much a coup. And so, when you start to look at the fact that, yes, this is the United Nations, and yes, it is foreign, and everything that they have established so far in our nation is considered infrastructure, why would they refer to that as infrastructure unless they were conquering us? Because what did we call it when we went to Iraq? We went over there, the first thing we did was establish infrastructure, didn't we?
Yeah.
And so here they are, they're establishing all their processes of government to sit right alongside ours, and all of theirs are based on communism and fascism. And, so I look at it and I go, yeah, so this whole deal of sustainable development is, they've got the stupid flowery descriptions. There's 342 different definitions of sustainable development. And I went, it's a good lie when they have to have that many definitions, And basically, I would tell everybody, if you want to know what sustainable development is, forget all of it. Forget all of their flowery explanations, and just remember what Tony Blair, previous British Prime Minister, said. He got up and he said, there's capitalism, there's communism, and now there's sustainable development. And so, I went, oh, right, that's a form of government. That's governance. It's an ism without the ism, so people aren't able to understand exactly what it is. And so you've got this eco-governance going on with all the different aspects of communism, as well as fascism happening. And so that's kind of where we have to look at it. We're guaranteed in the Constitution a Republican form of government. But regulation is considered fascism. Regulation on private property is considered fascism. And so just the very fact that we can be regulated on our own property is against the Constitution, right there. And, you know, when you start talking to people about, well, this is fascism and stuff, they kind of shrink back, especially when you're talking to elected officials, because they don't understand, and they don't understand that the things that they're involved in and the things they're doing are actually parts of this, you know, this fascist process. And they shrink back because they don't know history well enough to understand what they're even looking at. And so, you know, it's interesting that this book came about as it did, because after I ran for county commissioner, we had a newspaper over there whose owner supported me in the race, and after it was done, she said, well, can you start writing articles and submit them to the paper each week so we can educate people on this whole subject? And I said, you bet. And so I did that for the past, you know, almost 2 years, and then decided to write the book. But as I was writing, I figured, well, I need to aim this book at the elected officials, regardless of party, and it's going to have to be a quick and easy read that people can use for a quick reference. It's got all the, you know, the real gripping quotes, the hard facts. It's got all the websites listed, everything that a person needs to know, and be able to read through real quickly and get a good understanding of what's going on. And that's exactly what has happened. It's such an easy read. You know, one lady read it in a whole afternoon. So I went perfect, because I could have written 10 or 12 books. I mean, you do 6 solid years worth of research on this stuff. I probably could have, you know, gone into enough detail to just bore people right into sleep, you know, but I wanted to keep it short and simple, because we all know elected officials don't really like to read stuff anyway, right? So you know, we got to look at attention span here. And so it's kind of picking up speed with people that are wanting to buy it in bulk to provide to their elected officials. And that's happening around the nation right now. People are ordering them in bulk and just flat out giving them to them, you know, and saying, you know, you need to look at this and understand it. And while it explains the whole issue, the whole last chapter is devoted to actions that remedy the situation. So it's not just whining and complaining, it's a description of the problem as well as solutions that have already worked in different areas, through cities, counties, and states. And it includes Alabama's latest bill. I don't know if all of you are familiar with Alabama's Bill 477. If you're not, it was passed just this year in May. And so far, that piece of legislation is probably the most gripping, effective piece of legislation in the nation against Agenda 21 right now, where they are demanding that all the agencies go through due process in regards to any property rights issue at all, where the agencies are just slithering around through the dark and coming up underneath, you know, in the shadows, and they're able to do this regulatory taking like they were going to try to do to us, like they've done to lots of farmers over on our side already. And so if we've got something with some teeth to force them to due process, you know, because that was essentially what I was trying to do with the agent on the phone, was force him into due process, saying, I'm not going to do this without a court order. And him just laughing in the face, you know, of, oh, that's not the way we work. And so if we can come back with due process and say, oh, yes, it is, that's exactly the way it works, because we were just able to follow Alabama. We just passed it right here in Washington State. And so there's all the information in the last chapter for the Alabama bill. And we're over on the very last table if you're interested in picking up a copy. And I've also got copies of that Alabama bill attached to a letter to your reps and senators. It's a letter of introduction explaining how and why. And if you would like to, I would really kind of like to see a pledge of, you know, bravery, courage. Let's stand up. Let's take the actions that we can take You know, I'm not calling you to arms, I'm calling you to a bill, okay, where we can all work together, and we're some of the most active, knowledgeable people in the state right now, and we're the ones that are going to have to make the next step. And so if you would pick up a copy of that bill and essentially promise yourself that you'll either email it to your reps and your senators, or you'll actually take it into their office and discuss it with them. I don't know, give them a copy of the book too so they can read about it. And I'm pushing for getting a copy of the Alabama bill in the winter session of 2013. And so, hopefully, yes.
Okay, now what kind of got me smoldering under the collar is when government started claiming underground water so they could put meters on private wells, something else that we need to be alert to.
Well, exactly. And if we have due process, it might sound insignificant, but it's going to put the kibosh on a lot of their plans, and let me tell you right now, because if you can hold that in front of their face and say, you have no right, you take this to court, you get a jury to prove it, and if you can get a full conviction in a court with a jury, then you can come back and start talking to me about this. But let me tell you, there was as many people as have lost their land already and just turned over like a cowardly dog. It just kind of makes me sick, you know. It's unfortunate because they don't even understand what their rights are. They just think, oh, that's big and scary, and they're intimidated, and they just turn right over. And there's one guy that stood up over on that area, in my area, that he had about 3,500 acres of more just prime grazing land. It's all sub-irrigated, gorgeous, and he ran about 2,500 head of cattle on it. And when you drive by this, it looked like a golf course. I mean, it's gorgeous out there. They've got plenty of room, free air, all this. Well, the DOE came to him also, and they started pulling the garbage of, you're going to have to fence it all off back to, oh, thank you. This is a copy of that book, by the way. You're going to have to fence this off, 100 feet this year, and of course they're not telling him this, 300 feet the next year, 500 feet the next year, and this essentially would have bankrupted him. And so he said, well, because his property ran along the Colville River, and they said, well, you're polluting the water. Your cows are polluting the water. And he said, okay, well, you're going to take some water tests, so am I. And so every time they went to take water tests where the water went into his property and where it went out of his property, he was right there. And not only did he just take the water tests, he stayed with his sample. He took it himself. He went with the DOE to the water testers. He stayed with the sample till it was tested and got it back in his hand, so that there was no sneaky sleight of hand garbage going on like happens a lot. And so since he stayed with his samples and he continued to do that through the whole year, at the end of the year, you're not going to guess what happened. Those tests all came back showing that water was 300% cleaner when it left his property than when it came into his property. And so the DOE just kind of shut up and disappeared. And he said, well, so why am I getting polluted water on my land? and they wouldn't investigate it. And do you know why? Because upstream from him is property that they took over and turned back into like a wetland, a marshy wetland. It was man-made, and got all these little man-made islands. And what happens in that situation is you get an anaerobic situation where it can't kill the bacteria. The grass grows so tall that it's just mosquito infested. It's nasty, and it pollutes the water. And so here he is. He's got this, basically like a filtration system going on his place, and now they can't touch him. But that's been their whole thing the whole time is, oh, you've got livestock, you're ruining the world, right? And so what's funny is that they don't understand that the cow has just taken the niche of buffalo. I mean, they've essentially got the same shape and size of hoof, and you can all remember hearing how many millions of buffalo used to exist in herds as they go everywhere, and you know how interesting that God's ecosystem works without the Department of Ecology, right? You know, and the fact that you can darn well bet all those millions of buffalo were in and out of that water. I mean, was anybody there where the Indians tell him, "Hey, shoot, get out of there. You know, you're making everything all, you're killing the fish." There was none of that going on. It still works. They didn't wipe out the fish. They didn't destroy everything. In essence, they were making everything better because they're able to graze it down, fertilize it, it feeds the birds, the insects, everything works just the way it's supposed to. It keeps the water clean. Yeah, imagine that, you know. And the water's clean, the fish are happy, everybody's happy, you know. And so here we've got the same thing happening. They teach you this in wildlife biology, and each animal has a niche. You can replace one animal from that niche with another animal of the same niche, and it basically will occupy the same job. And so essentially,
is that part of your education?
Yes, exactly. It all works together. You know? What a shock!
Everything you took.
Yeah, I got something out of it after all. Yeah, and so as it works, the cattlemen turn out to be doing us a service, not a disservice. They're keeping the water cleaner. But wow, is the Department of Ecology mad about that, you know? Here they are, just hoping everybody will believe that we've got one ecological disaster after another happening out there because we're all mindless idiots that, you know, just want to dump all our sewage in the creek. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And of course, we know that's their MO anyway. They love stuff that's the farthest from the truth. So, yeah.
Okay, now, they've been trying to stick my... I haven't seen that. For the $500, I think it's 500, I don't remember the exact number, to have our septic tank inspected every year. And we rejected that because we had no state-of-the-art septic tank there, and we refuse to do it.
Keep refusing it because that's your right, and the more you cower, the more they attack, and essentially, when you start standing up and you get other people inspired to start standing up, guess who's behind you? God's going to be behind you, because think about this story. Biblically, who did God rely on in the most impossible odds? He relied on David. Wasn't he small and little and almost insignificant to everybody else? Who else did he rely on? He had relied on Gideon. Do all of you know the story of Gideon? Where, you know, here he is, those that don't know, here he is, what was he considered? The grumpy farmer. And they were being oppressed by the Midianites. And not only was Gideon an oppressed farmer, he was the lowest man on the oppressed farmer's end too. I mean, he didn't even have respect of his peers, basically. But he was smart enough to, when the Midianites would come in at harvest time and steal all their harvest, he was smart enough to cut it while it was still green and they weren't there, and then he'd go stash it away in a cave. And so I think God probably went, oh, well, at least he's smart, you know. And so he went in there and he said to Gideon, he said, I need you to conquer the Midianites, you know, army of 25,000 people. And Gideon went, are you kidding? You know, here he is, a grumpy farmer. He didn't even really want to be bothered. And plus, they're basically starving all the time, and he's the lowest of the lowest on the totem pole. And he said, I don't know anything about battling. I don't know anything about wars. Nobody even really likes me that much. And how am I going to get these people to follow me, right? And he says, you don't worry. You know, basically, I've got your back. And so he talks him into it, and they start going along. And he says, I'm going to have you pull together 10,000 men. And he was able to pull 10,000 men together with God's help. And then what I found most interesting was God said to him, we're going to not use that 10,000 men. We're going to use 300 men. And Gideon went, oh, okay, great. Okay, first of all, it was bad enough. There's going to be 10,000 of us going against 25,000. Now you're saying 300 of us going against 25,000? I think that's, you could tell he was just like, no way. and God said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, he basically said, I would rather have 300 brave men than 10,000 cowards. And we're going to go through, and I'll show you which of these 10,000 men are the brave 300, and those are the ones you're going to take. And so they all went to this place to drink, and he said, those that drink like animals, those are not the ones we want. The ones that cup the water, those are the ones we want. Those are the brave men, which also signifies that he likes a civil man. He likes somebody with some civility, some manners, some, and bravery. He can't stand the coward. So I think that, like in our example, if God sees that you're brave enough to stand up even against the most atrocious odds, he will help you. Because who are we? We're nobody, and the Department of Ecology has, empires of wealth behind them. And so he helped us. And so that's my own testimony. And my advice to each one of you, no matter how insignificant you think you are, it's just not true. You stand up, you be brave, you be courageous, because that was how God designed us to be in the first place. And obviously, everybody that's here probably really doesn't need that message, because we already are the brave people. We're already taking a stand. And so I'm encouraging each of you, if you can, just stop by over there, pick up a copy of that bill. We actually aren't going to be here that long because we've got to leave early in order to be able to get back. My husband works early. He gets up at 3 in the morning. Anyway, I just want to really encourage you, and where we can take an action, we need to take the action now.